Can you hear me? There I am. I'm on. Praise the Lord. Did y'all have a good lunch break? All right, I can't hear y'all. Don't fall asleep on us now. I know you just ate lunch, but how y'all doing today? We're going to try that a third time. Third time's a charm. How you guys doing today? All right. That's a little bit better, I got to say this. Every year I forget, and every year I'm reminded, but I'm absolutely amazed at how many people you can fit in that Gaga pit. It really is quite amazing. I think it's a miracle of God. I think God expands the walls of Gaga balls so y'all can fit like 100 people in there. It's really pretty cool. Y'all enjoying the convention so far? All righty. Well, hey, I heard Pastor George say one time that whenever you have a guest speaker, you want to get the pulpit to that guest speaker as quickly as possible. So I don't want to take up a whole lot of time because I want to make sure our guest has sufficient amount of time to do what he needs to do and say what God's told him to say. But I'm extremely excited. We had this man here with us for the first time, I think it was last year. He did an awesome job. Last year we did an interview too. Do you remember the interview? We had a fun time. I love Tim Barton because he is a man that's not afraid to say what the Lord has told him to say, and he's not afraid to speak truth, and it's absolutely amazing. And in the world where everything's abstract and everything's fluid, we need absolute truth. We need concrete truth in our lives. Amen? I want to say that again. We need absolute truth in our lives. Amen? Amen. Well, praise the Lord. Well, I'm not going to take up any more time. Everybody stand on your feet, and please welcome Mr. Tim Barton.
Checking. Am I on? Check, test, check. Yeah? Kind of. Okay. Perfect. You guys have a seat. All right. There's a lot I want to talk about and some stuff I want to get into. And I want to encourage you guys. You are living in an interesting time in history. And one of the things we know is that God raises people up for the era in which they are in. And so I want to start with a few thoughts. One of the ideas from Rising Generation, your generation, is when people are asked to describe their generation in a word, the most common word that people use for Gen Z. Now, you are Gen Z in case you don't know. Gen Z is like 5 to 24 years old. Presumably, you're somewhere in that range. You know the most common word that Gen Z uses to describe themselves? Hopeless. You guys live in what is considered to be the most discouraged generation that's ever lived. And I want to give you guys some hope. Because maybe you're in a place and you're like, I'm not discouraged, I'm good. Okay, if you're not, man, that's awesome. Praise God for you. But you will have friends who feel hopeless, who feel discouraged, things going on in their life. And I want to give you some thoughts and hope. And I want to start with a very basic, big picture idea. In fact, I'm going to have some pictures up on the screen behind me. Hopefully somebody in the tech team can help navigate and get my slides switched over. Perfect. Okay, this is not the Garden of Eden, but it's supposed to be. I have no idea what it looked like. I wasn't there. You weren't either, so we don't know if it's right or wrong. In creation, God decided he wanted there to be something. From nothing makes something. Starts, right, there's 6 days of creation, 7th day he rested, but on the first day, God spoke. And when he spoke into existence, right, there's light and there's darkness and he separates it, and God goes through this process of creation. And as God is creating, it's interesting that finally you get to day 6, and then God has made all of the animals, and everything is there, and then God makes Adam, and God tells Adam, okay, now you get to name stuff. And at this point, God hasn't made Eve, which is also kind of interesting, because as Adam is naming stuff, he's realizing, like, nothing is quite like me, right? Naming all the animals, and it says that he saw there was not a suitable helper, which also, as a side note, means Adam had to be looking, right? And so animals are coming by, he's like, donkeys, no, that's not for me. Peacock, no, that doesn't seem right. Armadillo, nope. Right? Like literally he's having to think this through. Elephant, interesting, nope, that's not going to work. The reality is everything goes through. He names all the animals, and then it says he saw there was no suitable helper, right? So God puts him into sleep. God takes a rib. God makes Eve. Here's what's crazy, though. Even as Adam is naming the animals, I want you to think about this. When Adam is naming the animals, Adam, almost like Noah's Ark, where like God has all the animals come in 2 by 2 and like they're all lined up, as Adam's naming the animals, right? the Bible doesn't give us exactly how this happened, but in my mind, like probably they're lined up and he's going down the line. He's like, okay, you are a hippopotamus. You are a giraffe. And he's just going down naming the animals. But if you look at the animals are weird. Right? Like, I don't know if you've been to a zoo, and the Fort Worth Zoo, you actually can go to and you can feed the giraffes, which is kind of cool. You know, giraffes have a 2-foot-long tongue. Okay? You actually can buy, like, lettuce, and you can feed it with lettuce. And so I have a 3-year-old daughter, and so she always wants to feed the giraffes when we go to the Fort Worth Zoo, and she'll hold it up, and, like, they will wrap their tongue around her arm, and, like, she screams, ah! Like, I mean, like, that would be weird. Like, this alien creature is, like, sucking your arm in, right? That's weird. But in the midst of this, I want you to think about this. If you are Adam in the garden, and you are looking at all of these animals, as you're looking at these animals, and you're like, okay, they're all really different. Why did God make all the animals really different? This is not a weird question, it's an important question. Why did God make all the animals different? What do you think? Who in the room is a junior or senior? Oh my gosh, that's like most of you. Perfect. Okay, hey, what's your name? Destiny. Yeah. Say it again. Destiny. Why do you think God made all the animals different? He likes variety. It's a great answer, sure. I like it. All right. Junior and senior, put your hand back up. Oh, okay, I already see you raising your hand. What's up? For his pleasure. Good answer. What's your name? Say it again. Drew. Okay. Was there something else? For God's pleasure and what else? Yeah, to show how great he is through his diversity of creation. Sure. Let me give you an interesting thought. The Bible actually gives us an indication of why God made everything he did and why it was all different. And it actually, in Genesis chapter 2, it tells us why God made man. Okay, let's go there. Why did God make man? Someone made in his image, someone more like him. That's a great thought. Yeah. All right, somebody else. What do you think? Somebody to worship him? That's a great thought. Now, it's worth noting that can angels worship God? Sure. Okay, and actually, mankind, men and women, are the only thing on earth made in God's image. But like, we don't know how similar angels might be to God or not. We know we're the closest thing on earth made to God. But it could be that there is other things made in God's image, like an angel. So it's not just to worship him. It's not just because we're made in his image. There was another reason God made man. What do you think? Fellowship? That's a great answer. But didn't God have lots of angels to fellowship with that we know of? Okay, what do you think? To spread his word? That's great. Although, before man, there was no fall, so everybody could be with God. Right? So they didn't really have to spread the word. It's like, hey, let me tell you about my friend. He's that guy right there, right? So it'll be a little different. Witnessing would have been way easier at that time, right? Like, let's be clear. If you were one of Jesus' disciples, witnessing would have been so easy. You're like, there's this guy named Jesus. He does miracles. He's that guy right there. Like, that's a lot easier than where we are today. It's like, okay, there's this guy like a couple thousand years ago, and he was really cool. It's just different. But let's go back. Why did God make man? What do you think? To enjoy everything he created? Okay, let me stop you, because so far people are making intelligent thoughts, and I'm not downplaying any of your intelligent thoughts. Let me show you something in the Bible. If you have a Bible, go to Genesis chapter 2, go to verse 5. If you don't have a Bible, I will read it to you, so I'll walk you through this. But Genesis chapter 2, verse 5, at the end of the verse, it says that God had not caused it to rain on the earth. If anybody's there, why had God not caused it to rain yet? What does it say? What does the rest of the verse say? Because there was no man to till the ground. What does that mean? It means there was nobody to work the ground. And because there was nobody to work the ground, God's like, it's not ready for rain yet. God did not send the rain because man was not there yet. Go to verse 15. Chapter 2, verse 15. In verse 15, it says, the Lord God took man and put him in the Garden of Eden to what? To tend and keep it. God made man on purpose and for a reason. God gave him an identity and a job. Everything that God has ever made was on purpose and for a reason. Okay? If you look at all of the animals in creation, God did not make any mistakes, right? Like this wasn't some weird Harry Potter movie where God gets this wand, he's like, I'm not really sure what's going to happen, and says these words, and poof, and he's like, ooh, that's weird, right? Like that thing has a long neck, giraffe. Like God is not surprised by anything because God did it on purpose and for a reason. When God made Adam, God looked and saw that there was a lack in creation. And God said, because of the lack, I will make a man and I will give him a job, and his job will be to complete where we are lacking. Now, I want you to hear this. It's very important. God does not make mistakes. When God made you, it's because he saw there was a lack somewhere and said, I need someone to fulfill where we are lacking. What's your name? Elizabeth. And God said, who could do that? Boom, Elizabeth. On purpose for a reason, right? What's your name? Okay? God saw a lack somewhere in the world and said, I know who can solve this problem. And he made you. Everything that God made was on purpose and for a reason. In fact, you know when the devil shows up and starts talking the first time to Eve? What does he tell Eve? He's like, oh, there's this fruit. It's so good, you're going to love it. Right? And Eve's like, I'm not sure I'm supposed to do that, right? Because God said there's like this one tree and there's fruit, and we're not supposed to eat from this one tree, but from all these others, but not this one. And Eve says, or the snake says to Eve, is that what God really said? Because I'm pretty sure God was like, we need to hold them back, because if they eat of this, they'll be like me. And like, so he starts lying to her. He lied about her purpose and her identity. God created everything on purpose and for a reason. And the devil wants to change the purpose, identity, and reason in your own mind for why God has you here. Oh, well, that's not what God has for you. Understand me. This is where Gen Z has bought into the oldest lie in the Bible. Did God really say? Yes, God really said. God really said that you were made in his image. That you are not a mistake. You are not an accident. This is a big deal because your generation, the people you go to school with, the people you play sports with, the people you hang out with, the people you talk to on social media, and you're snapping and your streak's awesome and it's great. That's great. Cool. There are people who don't understand their value. There are people who don't understand that they were made on purpose for a reason. And so there are people feeling more depressed, more discouraged, and more hopeless than anybody who's ever lived before because they bought the lie of the devil more than anybody else. Why? Because they also don't know the truth of God's word. About what the Bible reveals about what God has called us to do. And here's what I want you to understand. This is our starting place, and like this isn't even where I want to go. This is just where we're starting so we can go somewhere else I want to go. Where our starting place is God doesn't make mistakes, and God created you on purpose and for a reason. God saw there was a lack, and God said, I need someone to complete where we are lacking. And so if God made you on purpose and for a reason, guess what the devil wants to do? To take you out from accomplishing what God put you here to accomplish. So if you can get discouraged, if the devil can make you feel hopeless, if the devil can make you feel like your life isn't important and people don't notice you and you don't have any friends and you're bullied and all these kind of things, if the devil can overwhelm you, then he can slow you down and hinder you from walking in the fullness of what God has for you. And what I want to encourage you with is God made you on purpose for a reason. That's just where we're starting, right? Like that's not where I want to go, that's where we're starting. Where I want to go is in Matthew chapter 8. Jesus has delivered the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5 through 7. In chapter 8, Jesus tells the disciples, hey, everybody, get in this boat. We're going to the other side. Now, we're going to start in verse 18, and I'm going to read through this, and then I want to get into what I really want to talk about for the next little bit with you. So in verse 18, if you guys are there, Matthew chapter 8, verse 18, go with me for a minute. When Jesus saw the crowd around him, he gave orders to cross to the other side. Everybody say, other side. It's going to be important. We're coming back to that. Skip down to verse 23, because this is when they actually get in. Then he got into the boat, and his disciples followed him. We're going to come back to that. It's important. They followed Jesus into the boat. Suddenly, a furious storm came on the lake, so the waves swept over the boat, but Jesus was sleeping. The disciples went and woke him, saying, Lord, save us, we're going to drown. He replied, you have little faith. Why are you so afraid? Then he got up and rebuked the winds and the waves, and it was completely calm. The men were amazed and asked, what kind of man is this? Even the wind and waves obey him. When he arrived on the other side, in the region of the Gadarenes, 2 demon-possessed men, that's not really part of where we're going, but they came from the tombs, they met him, and they were so violent that no one could pass that way. That's a different story. Jesus solves that problem too, but we're going to start talking about going to the other side, okay? And so, Pastor Holden, I'm going to need some volunteers. I need 6 disciples in the boat, and then I needed Jesus to sleep in the back of our boat. Jesus. All right, y'all pick a seat. And just so you know, the rudder's in the back, and that's where they drove. That's that's cool. All right, okay, that's where that happened. Oh, but that's okay. All right, Jesus, you're napping, bro. You chilling. All right, so here's the way this works. Now, first of all, Jesus is already asleep. You guys can't even see him behind the speaker. But Jesus steps into the boat. Other disciples get on the boat with him. And so as they're going along in this scenario, suddenly a furious storm appeared. Now, you're going to do your best roller coaster impression. Okay? A storm appears, but here's the deal. Y'all are in front, so whatever y'all go, they got to follow behind. All right? So a serious storm. So who's going first? You want to be the driver, right? All right, you're the driver. All right, so there's a storm coming. Y'all got to follow. Which way the storm's going? I'm so impressed. It's a good storm. It's really big. I mean, was that what we got? Was that it? All right, I appreciate the noise back here. Good. Okay, now stop. Now, where they were going, they're in the Sea of Galilee. The Sea of Galilee is like this massive lake, but the lake is big enough that there was a huge storm, and inside the boat, Jesus' disciples, most of them were experienced fishermen. They're used to being on the water, right? They're not bothered by storms. They've seen storms before. And in the midst of this, Jesus is in the back sleeping. Now, I've never slept on like a roller coaster ride. I feel like that's probably weird. I have slept on boats, right? So yes, been in a storm, slept on boats, but Jesus is sleeping. So they woke him up. What's your name? Levi, I need you to wake Jesus up. Okay, but Levi, hang on a second. You gotta give us your best like terror face, right? That's good. I feel the terror, like you are terrified. All right, wake Jesus up. That was the power of the word. There was like no touch. He was like, get up, right? Like, okay, that was a miracle. You just woke Jesus up with your voice. That's awesome. Okay, so you go back to the front. Okay, now Jesus, here's the thing. You are now going to go to the front, but you got to stop the storm and hang on. So you're going to get like this elevated position, right? So you're going to stand up on the edge of their chairs. We're making this official. All right, hey, there's your image right there, right? This is you. Okay. Oh, yeah, there it is. All right. Now, you, okay, you have to talk to the storm, and you got to tell the storm, Jesus, in the Bible, it says, peace, be still.
Peace, be still.
Whoa. Super effective. It's calm. All right? Now, Jesus, you can stand down, but you're going to turn to all your disciples. And what does Jesus tell them? You remember?
Ye of little faith.
Whoa, right? Now what do the disciples say, right? What do the disciples say? Do you remember what the disciples say? Do you remember? In this moment, like he just calmed, he's like, where's your faith? And they're like, what'd they say? What's your name? Isabel, I'm so impressed. Yes. They said, what kind of person is this? Even the wind and the waves obey. I appreciate you so much. You're awesome. Even the winds and waves obey him. Now, hang on a second. Here is something I want you to get a hold of. All right, so disciples, Jesus, make sure y'all listen right now. Jesus was not bothered by the storm. Do you know why? Good thoughts? Something else from the Bible. What? He had faith? Sure he did. Something else. Yeah. He already told them the destination. He knew where they were going. He said, let's go to the other side. He knew. Hey, disciples, why should you not have been overwhelmed by the storm? Because Jesus already knew the storm could not overwhelm them because he knew where they were going. Okay? In every one of our lives, you are going to go through storms. And what happens is a lot of people, they get overwhelmed. Jesus, hang on a second. They get overwhelmed in this moment thinking that this moment is their destiny. Because this is the biggest moment they've ever had in their whole life, the most terrifying, the most challenging. This is the worst moment they've had in their life. And Jesus slept. Why? Because he knew this ain't no big deal. We're going to make it through this and you're going to be fine. If you don't understand that the storm is temporary, the storm can take you out. Okay? Disciples, Jesus, y'all have a seat. Good job. You guys give them a hand. Good job, good job, good job. Yes. Everything was made on purpose and for a reason. So God made them that they all did different things. Yes. That's why there's uniqueness, is they were all made for different reasons to accomplish different goals. Let me go back though. I want to highlight the fact everybody has storms. And most people's storms are unique for them. For some of you, your storm might be you feel like you have no friends. Or you might deal with a bully. You might have a hurt that's led to an addiction. You might have hurt that's led to you wanting to quit. You might hate school because you feel dumb. You might have a difficult situation with your parents because they're fighting, or your parents are divorced, or you would have the lack of parents. Some of you look in the mirror and you wish you were someone different. You might even hate yourself. You feel like you don't matter and no one cares about you. I cannot name all of these storms that people go through, but what I know is everybody goes through storms. Everybody goes through storms. Every one of us have things that we deal with in our life where we are having to evaluate what we are going to do. And the challenge is that a lot of people don't recognize that storms are temporary, and they let the storm that was only temporary take them out. Here's what I'm going to encourage and challenge you with. I'm going to give you 3 things, but I want to start with this today. I'm going to start with where we started at the beginning, that you have to know that God made you on purpose and for a reason, and the devil will use storms to try to take you out, to keep you from fulfilling what God has for you. But the reality is there's another side to the storm. Jesus told the disciples, get in the boat, we're going to the other side. And on the way to where Jesus was leading them, they encountered a storm. You could be trying to follow God with all your heart and life. I'm just trying to go where God leads me. And a storm comes up, and you're like, why am I dealing with this? Right? I'm trying to honor God. I'm trying to love God. I'm trying to be like Jesus. I'm just trying to do the right thing, and I'm dealing with this storm in my life. Why? Storms do not have to take you out, but the devil will use storms to try to keep you from getting to the other side where you can fulfill what God has for you in your life. And here's where I want to walk through some of these thoughts, because maybe if you look on the other side, and first of all, I want you to say with me, there's another side, because you need to know that for your life. You need to know that for your friends when they're like, oh, this is terrible. There's another side, right? There's another side of the storm where it is calm, and maybe on the other side, maybe you find peace. Maybe you find some of the answers that you can't find right now, because right now maybe you have family problems. Maybe you're addicted to something. Maybe you have no friends right now. You feel hopeless right now. Maybe you hate yourself. You don't even know who you are. So you're trying on different things, thinking that you can be somebody different. You have to know there's another side, number one. But as we get into this, I want to point out for you, for the disciples, they could have stayed on the bank when Jesus said, get in the boat. They could have quit in the middle, or they could have gone to the other side. And their life story would have gone very differently based on how they had responded. In the text, it says, the very end of that passage, that when he arrived on the other side, you can arrive on the other side. So I want to give you the thoughts of how do you arrive on the other side of the storm, because everybody in life is going to go through a storm, and people's storms look different, and some people feel like their storms are bigger. Nobody understands, and nobody knows what I'm going through. No, everybody goes through storms. And the way you get through storms is consistent, even though storms are different. I want to give you some thoughts to help you get to the other side. So 3 thoughts on how you get through the storm. How do you get to the other side? Number 1 is you have to get unstuck. What does that mean? Is you can't stay where you are and think things are going to change by themselves. Jesus told his disciples, get in the boat. We're going to the other side. Jesus got in the boat, and his disciples followed him into the boat. The boat represents moving, not stagnant. If you don't get in the boat and start moving, you will not change your situation. You have to start somewhere, and you can only start where you are. So if you're at the beginning of a storm, that's where you're starting. If you're in the middle of it, that's where you're starting. You have to start where you are. But if you get in the boat, you can start moving through where eventually you will make it through the storm. And there's people who go, man, I wish my family was different. I'm sure some of you wish you went to a different school. Some of you wish you were taller or stronger or better at this or smarter at that. And maybe you're just not. But what happens is you're looking at what you're not instead of what God made you to be. You understand? If you compare yourself to someone else, the best you can ever be is second place. You will only be a cheap copy of someone else. God didn't make you to be someone else. God didn't make you to solve the problems God made them to solve. God made you on purpose for a reason to solve a unique set of issues that only you could speak into. You might be the only one that can encourage your friends in certain ways. You might be the only one that can have certain conversations, that can do certain things. And what happens is a lot of times people look and go, wait a second, but I don't have what this person has. It's crazy, right? Because does anybody have a smartphone? What kind of phone do we have? What do you have? A 13 Pro, okay. I mean, it's kind of big flex, whatever, right? Okay. So we got the 13 Pro Max, the iPhone, right? What if the iPhone's like, I just wanted to be an iPad, right? Or even dumber, like, I want to be an Android. You're dumb, right? Oh, no, right? Shots fired. Okay. I mean, this is pretty nice. I might just hang on to this one, right? Here's the thing. Everybody falls into a comparison thought where everybody at some point wishes they were like somebody else or wishes they were somebody else. But that is a lie from the enemy to keep you from recognizing the value that God has placed on you and being who you are. Don't try to compare yourself to someone else in the midst of this. Recognize God made you on purpose for a reason to accomplish something very specific. And in the midst of you accomplishing something very specific. You can't get paralyzed by the storm. For many people, a storm comes and they don't know what to do, and they stop moving, they stop working. The storm is almost always worse in your mind than it is in real life. Let me give you a thought. When you were 7, what you thought was a really big deal, okay, let me back up. I have a 3-year-old. Let me start there because this is real life. I have a 3-year-old. And this morning at my house, before breakfast, she says, I want a lollipop. And I'm like, nope, we don't have lollipops before breakfast. And she starts crying, I just want a lollipop. And you're like, oh my gosh, you're an idiot. Well, no, in the love of Jesus, right? Like, obviously, love you, dummy, right? But here's the thing, okay? When you are 3, the things that you think are really big and really important, you don't think are really big and really important when you're 13. Right? Like, if you're 13 and crying about not having a lollipop before breakfast, like, you have other issues. Right? Like, that's weird and you have problems. Okay? But understand, the things you thought were really important, okay, how many of you, again, if you're juniors or seniors, raise your hand. Keep your hands up. I'm going to ask you a question. Okay? How many of you, when you were in middle school, thought something was so important that now you think is dumb? Keep your hands up if that's you. If not, take it. Okay, I didn't see any hands go down. In middle school, now I'm not saying everybody in middle school is dumb. I'm just saying, right, that there are some things, like people who have been through middle school, y'all can put your hands down, right? Okay, are you a junior, senior? You're about to be? Okay, yeah. Here's the thing. Somebody tell me, what is something as a junior or senior or in middle school that you thought was really important and now you're like, that's kind of dumb? The lunch line. It's such a big deal, right? And you're like, that's dumb, okay? Something else in the back. The what? The GT program? Okay. Something else, yeah. Did you have your hand up? After school activities? Okay, what's something you thought was a big deal? Having all the silverware aligned. Is that like OCD? Like, it has to be right? Here's the thing. If you start looking at things you thought were a big deal, what you will discover is in your life, things change. And you're like, this is such a big deal. And then like a year later, you're like, that wasn't a big deal, right? Like, genuinely, can we all remember when there was someone who like used to be our best friend and they said something mean and we're like, oh my gosh, they hurt my feelings. And now we're like, I don't care. We're like, I don't even know that person anymore, right? Here's what I want you to know. The storms in your life are often bigger in your head than they are in reality. And you cannot allow your feelings to dictate what is not true. What is not true is storms do not wipe you out unless you stop. The only way the storm can overwhelm you is if you let the storm overwhelm you. Jesus told the disciples, let's go to the other side, okay? In this thought and scenario, here's what I want to encourage you with. You won't get unstuck sitting where you are. If you're going to get through the storm, you have to start moving. You have to get up and get in the boat. Number 1, you got to get unstuck. Number 2 is give it time. Give it time is recognizing that storms don't last forever. You keep moving. Just because you are moving in the right direction, it doesn't mean it's easy. In fact, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. Some of you, the storm will get much more difficult than it is right now before the storm passes. Some storms are a lot harder before the problem is solved. Don't think, I'm not encouraged by that thought, but it's true, right? Like, yes, Lord, let it be harder for all of us. Like, no, that's not what I'm, but yes, I appreciate the encouragement, right? But the reality is that just because a storm will pass doesn't mean it's not hard. I'm not downplaying the fact that you're going through storms, and some of you, it's only by the grace of God you're going to make it through the storm, but you will make it through the storm. But recognize, in the midst of this, how long it takes, nobody knows. So the question is, when is it over? Do you know when every storm is over? Every time. One answer every time. When is every storm over? When you get to the other side. I mean, that is correct. When you get to the other side. I'm telling you this because don't think, well, then I'll just do it good, and next week is all going to be better. It might not be all better. It might be worse next week. In fact, it might be worse for a while before it gets better, but the devil cannot take you out. Do you know the only person that can take you out is you? If you stop going through the storm, you might not make it to the other side. But if you give it time and you keep going, you can make the other side of the storm. Guys, life is full of ups and downs. You will have high highs and low lows, but you don't ever make decisions on the very top or the very bottom. What you do is you keep going. You don't get direction from emotion. Emotion just gives you an indication something's wrong, but emotion won't always even tell you what's wrong. It's just like something's not right. Don't make, this is noteworthy, don't make a permanent life decision in the middle of a storm. Because if you're in the middle of an emotional situation, your permanent life decision is probably not a very good permanent life decision. Just focus on getting to the other side. Just because you want to do something doesn't mean you do it. Don't make permanent decisions based on temporary feelings. There's a lot of people right now making permanent life decisions on temporary feelings. Some of your friends are doing it right now. Some people in this room are battling with that right now. Do not make life-altering decisions based on temporary feelings. It's always easier to quit. But it's never better. It would have been easier for the disciples to quit than to make it through the storm. Quitting doesn't make it better. It won't help you accomplish and achieve all that God has for you. It won't help you walk in the fullness and greatness of God's plan and purpose for your life. You have to keep going to get to the other side. Third thing is you got to have the right people in your boat. To have the right people in the boat, if Jesus was not in the boat, what should the disciples have done? Freak out because there was no hope. I want you to think about this. Jesus told the disciples, you of little faith. Why did they have little faith? Look, guys, these guys lived on the water. They had never seen a storm like this, and they're convinced they're going to drown. Where are they lacking faith? I want to give you a super interesting thought. They lacked faith because they didn't recognize God's plan and purpose was of too much importance that the storm could never have taken them out. I want you to think about this. Why do you lack faith? You lack faith for your own life and your own vision. What's your name? Yeah. Jeremiah, strong name. Jeremiah, it doesn't matter what storm at all comes your way. It doesn't matter what dangers around you. What God has is too important, right? When people are like, it's too dangerous, not for me, right? Because my plan and purpose is too big. I ain't worried about this nonsense. The only way that a storm overwhelms you is if you lose the faith for who God called you to be and you don't fight to get through the storm and you stop in the middle of the storm. The only way the disciples would have drowned is if they would have stopped. Jesus in the back chilling. He's like, you guys are crazy. This storm ain't taking nobody out. What is wrong with you? He gets up, calms the storm, and they're like, who is this guy? They had already seen Jesus do miracles. He's already healed the lame, the blind. Like arms are growing back where there weren't arms. People are raising from the dead. And they're still like, no, like, we understood that dude, but this dude just calmed the storm. We don't know who this guy is. I don't understand how they had seen all of the miracles of Jesus and they didn't get who Jesus was. But it's interesting, if you study the Bible, everybody forgets who Jesus is. Everybody. In the Old Testament, the Israelites, God does these amazing miracles to get them out from under Pharaoh. These 10 miracles. God gets it. They're at the Red Sea, right? Pharaoh's army's coming. God parts the Red Sea. They walk across on dry ground, get the other side. Moses raises the rod. The Red Sea comes and it swallows up Pharaoh and his army. These guys drown. Like, they have seen all these miracles, right? They run out of food. And God's like, it's cool. I'll just bring birds and they'll be on the ground. Wake up, get the birds. Like, you're good. Right, like manna. Like, it's crazy. God does miracle after miracle after miracle. And along the way, they're like, oh, it's really hard. I wish I was a slave in Egypt again. You're an idiot. Like, what are you talking about? Guys, everybody forgets what God does. In your own life, you know what's crazy is right now, many of you are going through a storm. And here's what's crazy. You have already made it through storms in your life. God's already led you this far. And for some reason, we're like, oh, but this one's too big, right? My parents, or the bullies, or grades, or sports, or I didn't make the team, I got cut, I'm sitting on the bench, like whatever it is. We feel like this is a huge storm. And the reality is, if you look at the disciples, the only thing they had to have to succeed was Jesus in the boat. What I'm going to encourage you is you need the right people in your boat, because not only do you need Jesus in the boat, you need people in your boat who will point you to Jesus. You know, one of the cool things about life in general, studies show that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if the 5 people you spend the most time with are negative, are apathetic, right, aren't motivated, are lazy, guess what you are going to be by default of who you are hanging out with? Okay, I can tell you right now, my 5 friends I spend the most time with are all really rich. And I chose them on purpose. Okay? They all have families. They've all been married to the same person the whole time, right? I chose people who I looked at and said, man, I want whatever they have. Who you get in your boat makes a difference, because everybody goes through storms. But if you're in the middle of a storm and the 5 people in your boat with you are like, hey, dude, don't worry, Jesus is back there, we good. It reminds you, oh yeah, we're good, we got Jesus with us, we're going to make it through this storm. It keeps your perspective where it needs to be, and those people help you identify what you need to have. Where you are right now, guys, everybody goes through storms. Everybody goes through storms, and yet, if you look at the disciples, even though they were experienced fishermen, they were used to storms, they allowed each other's fear to encourage the fear already in the boat. And that's why Jesus woke up and said, you guys, where's your faith? They should have known better of everybody, because fishermen know storms, they come and they go. Storms don't last. Storms pass. We're going to the other side. And because of the people around them, the fear built in the boat, and it kept them from going where God wanted them to go and accomplishing what God wanted them to do. As I'm telling you this, I understand that if you don't have the right people, they will give you bad advice. And the reason they give you bad advice is because they don't know how to go through the storm either. And if they don't know how to go through the storm, guys, you do not need to take advice from people who are not good at what it is you're trying to accomplish. Right? Imagine, if you will, the Bible talks about Jesus went, and there was a Samaritan woman, and she was at the well, and, right, Jesus says, hey, let's have a conversation. And she says, well, right, like, let me go and get people. And he's like, oh, yeah, and if you were to bring your husband, and she's like, oh, I'm not married. He's like, nope, you've been with 5 people, and the one you're with now, like, ain't even your husband. He's like, ugh. She's like, oh my gosh, you're a prophet. Like, how did you know that? I didn't tell anybody, right? Here's what's interesting. Not only does Jesus know who we are and what we've been through, Jesus is there to help us navigate and get to the other side of that storm, that you don't got to do none of this yourself. But if you don't have the right people in your boat who can remind you of who God is and the plans and purpose God has for your life, and that you are an overcomer, you are more than a conqueror through Christ Jesus, it's possible if you surround yourself with the wrong kind of people that they will drag you down. And by the way, along this line, right, like if you want a relationship advice, like someone who's had 5 husbands and the one she's with now is not even her husband, like don't ask that person, right? Like I'm amazed by people who are like getting advice on relationships from their friends who have never had a successful relationship in their entire life. Like, no, I love you, but like, don't tell me nothing. Like, if I don't know how to break up good with somebody, then we'll talk, right? Because you've had a lot of practice breaking up with a lot of people. Like, that ain't what I'm trying to do right now. We want people who can help us navigate where God has us and what God has for us. And so I want to bring it all together. In order for you to get through the storm, first of all, you have to step in the boat because you have to move. You can't stay where you are. You have to keep going. You have to find the right people so you can get to the other side. And here's where I want to wrap this together for you. And I want everybody to hear me. This is so important. You are not a mistake. You are not an accident. God made you on purpose for a reason to do something that nobody else can do. This is why when I see people who are in Gen Z who talk about, like, what's the one word to describe your generation? And they say hopeless. Why would you feel hopeless? Because if God made you to be conquerors, to be overcomers, to be giant slayers, then how does the devil take you out, make you feel like you can't do it, and therefore you never try? The only way you don't succeed is if you don't try and you don't persevere. And if you quit in the middle of the storm, you'll never make it to the other side. What I'm encouraging you is don't stop in the middle of the storm. And I want to finish by giving you a story. And actually, there's going to be 2 stories, but the 2 stories overlap. So back up historically is if you go through like America's presidents, we had George Washington and John Adams and Thomas Jefferson and James Madison and James Monroe. The 6th president of the United States, his name was John Quincy Adams. Now, John Quincy Adams, I'm really glad. Oh, can we get step back on the screen again? I see it on the back, but on the front. Okay. I'm glad we don't wear wigs, right? But here's the deal. All of us have kid pictures where we're like, oh, I'm so embarrassed. Like, yes, one day we will show your picture in 200 years, and people are like, I can't believe they wore their hair like that. Yeah, it's weird. So John Quincy Adams was the son of John Adams. When America was going through a revolution, he actually, when he was 8 years old, where the Battle of Bunker Hill took place, one of the first battles of the American Revolution, he actually stood on a hillside, and his pastor was out fighting in that battle, and he watched his pastor get shot and bayoneted, and his pastor died. He watched that as an 8-year-old. Well, in the midst of this, as an 8-year-old, his dad tells him that the Massachusetts Minutemen were out doing their musket drills. As an 8-year-old, his dad gave him a musket. He was like, you need to go learn how to do this. As an 8-year-old, right? Like, okay, let's be real clear. Some of you, like, you could be 17 and 18, and your parents are like, don't you ever touch that thing. Like, this is so dangerous. Like, no, this kid was 8 years old. He's out performing musket drills with Massachusetts Minutemen. When he was 11 years old, he received a congressional appointment from Congress. He was the official secretary to America's diplomat over in Paris. So John Quincy Adams goes to Paris as an 11-year-old, helping represent America when he was 14 years old. Is anybody in the room 14? Okay. When he was 14 years old, he was chosen to be a diplomat for America before the throne of Catherine the Great in Russia. And his job as a 14-year-old, he was the official interpreter for the delegation, because as a 14-year-old, he was already fluent in 6 languages. Okay, that's pretty impressive. Well, as he gets into his 20s, America becomes a nation. George Washington became the first president. As in his 20s, as a 20-year-old, he is chosen, or he's in his 20s, he's chosen to be America's top diplomat under George Washington. George Washington said he's the best diplomat America ever had. Then when his dad became president, John Adams was president, he again is chosen to be America's top diplomat. Then under Thomas Jefferson, he was elected as a U.S. Senator. Then under James Madison, he again was chosen to be America's diplomat. And in fact, he's the guy that negotiated the end of the War of 1812. So when we finally defeated Britain for a second time, he's the guy negotiating the end of that war. Under James Monroe, he became the Secretary of State. He then became the 6th President of the United States of America. So this guy's resume is like stupid awesome. He knew everybody, did everything. This guy was impressive. After being president, he did something that no other president in American history has ever done. He went and he served in Congress. And the reason he served in Congress, he said there was a great evil that needed to be remedied in America. Well, it was the evil of slavery. He became the leader of the anti-slavery movement in Congress. In fact, they gave him the nickname the Hellhound of Abolition. While he was in Congress, he served for 17 years. Now, he says at that time, this is in his journal, he said that Congress was only about 20% really anti-slavery at the time. He said, because some people were like, whatever, and some people were really in favor of it. Only 20% of people were really opposing it. Well, as the leader of the anti-slavery movement, one of the things that actually can happen is that you can petition Congress to make and pass new laws, and there were a lot of anti-slavery people, a lot of abolitionists in America at that time, and so they would send these letters suggesting we have new laws against slavery. Well, all those letters went to John Quincy Adams, and so he would get up in Congress every week, and he would bring a stack of papers that were petitions to end slavery. He actually, on some weeks, would have between 700 and 900 letters about ending slavery. Well, because he wants to end slavery, and because the majority of Congress was not in favor of ending slavery at that time, they actually went to the Rules Committee. Rules Committee is where they make all the rules for Congress, and they passed a brand new rule. The brand new rule they passed was called the John Quincy Adams Gag Order. It was made to shut this dude up. The law was you could not present any new suggested legislation if it's similar to something we already said no to. So the idea was, after he said we have to end slavery, and they're like, nope, we're not doing it, they said, then you can't talk about slavery anymore the rest of the year. Well, he didn't stop. So he kept bringing those petitions, and so they censored him. They reprimanded him. They even tried to expel him from Congress, which means they can kick him out, and so he's no longer congressman. But the problem for them was, if you kick someone out, the home district where they elect their congressman, they get to choose their congressman again, and so they just kept choosing him and sending him back. They're like, nope, that's our guy. We're keeping him there. So he is literally fighting against slavery, against people who are not against slavery, and he's going on and on and on. And in the midst of this, a reporter came to him one day and said, Mr. Adams, you have fought against slavery pretty much your whole life, and now you're in Congress, you're fighting against slavery, and there are no visible signs of success. How do you stay motivated when you haven't been successful at all? And this is, his answer is I think, one of the most profound things possible. His answer, he said, it's based on his life motto. His life motto was, duty is ours, results are God's. He told the reporter, the reason I keep doing this is because it's only up to me to do the right thing. It's up to God what happens after that. God has not called you to solve every problem that's ever been in the world. But God has called you to be faithful in accomplishing the plan and purpose he's given in your life. Well, John Quincy Adams, he kept going and kept going. And by the way, if you want to talk about a storm, for 17 years he fought in Congress and did not see slavery ended. For 17 years. Guys, most storms do not last for 17 years. Okay? But he kept going, and he kept going. The storm didn't take him out. His last term in Congress, there was a freshman congressman elected. This freshman congressman joins the anti-slavery movement that's led by John Quincy Adams. And this freshman congressman hears John Quincy Adams give speech after speech after speech against slavery. And John Quincy Adams, his last term in Congress, he actually got up from his desk and thought he was going to make a speech, and they said he clutched his chest and he fell down, he had a stroke, and he died in the Capitol building. Well, after he died, this young freshman was chosen, of all the congressmen, he was chosen to be on the committee that oversaw the burial of John Quincy Adams, which was a very big honor at that time, Because John Quincy Adams, he knew every founding father personally. He was a president. He was a diplomat, knew every single world leader, political leader of significance. Like, this guy was super famous. Well, in Congress, you only serve for 2-year terms. At the end of 2 years, you have to run for re-election. So this freshman, after 2 years in the anti-slavery movement, fighting in slavery, he ran for re-election. And he got defeated. He said, that's okay, I'm going to try again. He tried and ran for re-election a second time and got defeated. He said, okay, in Congress, you have the House and the Senate. He was running for the House. He said, this time, I'll run for the Senate. He ran for the Senate and got defeated. He then ran for state office and got defeated. And let me point out, if you run for political office, right, and you get defeated time and time and time again, like, imagine if you're running, right, to be the president of your class, and like every time people are like, nah, we don't like you, we're not choosing you. And every time you lose, like, guys, this is kind of a big deal that this guy never won an election again until he became the president of the United States of America. It was Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln, when he becomes president, the guy who had mentored him was the leader of the anti-slavery movement, John Quincy Adams. And Abraham Lincoln is a guy, right, who does the Emancipation Proclamation. He helps get the 13th and the 14th and the 15th Amendment passed. He's the guy that's responsible for ending slavery. But let me point out, where Abraham Lincoln learned this, his mentor was John Quincy Adams. John Quincy Adams, in his life, went through so many storms. In fact, the last storm that he was in the middle of was a fight against slavery. He didn't even make it all the way through to the other side. But he didn't let it take him out. And he kept fighting, and he kept fighting, and he kept fighting. Guys, God had given him a vision that he did not see realized. But God used him to mentor somebody in the next generation that actually accomplished all that God had called John Quincy Adams to do. And let me go even further. Because if we look at even Abraham Lincoln, when he grew up, his parents were Christian. But his dad was an alcoholic. In fact, his dad was an abusive alcoholic. His dad used to get drunk and beat the family every week. Abraham, right? Family was Lincoln, but Abraham used to go and irritate his dad so his dad would focus the beatings on him and not his mom. This dude went through a storm. In fact, when he left home, he became an atheist because he said, right, I've seen a Christian, my dad, and if that's what Christianity looks like, I want nothing to do with it. He became the town atheist, and he went through depression, he went through discouragement, and along the way, he became an attorney. And as an attorney, he actually reached out to a pastor. He said, I've argued a lot of cases, and I know as an attorney, when you argue cases, you have to consider the evidence from both sides. He said, so even though, right, like I hate my dad, he said, I've considered the evidence, and I believe there is more evidence that God does exist than there is against God. I believe that there is a God, he said, but I don't understand how to navigate God because my experience from my family has really tainted, right, what I would think about God. He said, I need someone to help guide me through this. Well, he had a pastor mentor him, and I just want to point out, Abraham Lincoln could have been taken out from storms of his life so many times. And had he been taken out, had John Quincy Adams been taken out, the story of America could have gone very, very differently. The reality of what I'm telling you, what we started, God creates everybody on purpose and for a reason. And you might not fully know why God has you here, but if you'll be faithful to what God has called you to do, where John Quincy Adams said, it's only my job to be faithful. It's up to God what happens after that. If you'll be faithful to what God has called you to do, you have no idea how God's going to use you, but God might use you to do unbelievable things in this nation, to impact people, to help people find Jesus, to find freedom, right? To find healing in their life. God can use you in incredible ways if you don't let storms take you out. I can go through any person noted in history, Abraham Lincoln. I can go through all the kind of heroes we could identify. Every one of them had storms in their life. But the people we celebrate, the people we remember, the people that we honor anywhere in life We honor because they were able to overcome and make it through their storm. What I'm telling you is God has an incredible destiny for you on the other side of the storm. And where you are, maybe you're like, man, I'm good right now. What I can tell you, in life, you are either in the middle of a storm, you've just gotten through a storm, or you're about to start a storm. Because storms are normal. Do you know what God does with storms? He uses them to make us stronger. That's why James says, consider it pure joy when you go through trials of any kind, knowing that testing your faith produces patience, right? But patience needs its perfect work so you can be complete, lacking nothing. God will develop our character. God will strengthen our resolve. God will make us stronger so that we can help lead, encourage, and deliver other people who are captive to the lies of the enemy. You cannot buy in to the lies of the devil, guys. You have to understand God made you on purpose for a reason, and all you have to do is get through the storm, because on the other side is where God is leading you to fulfill all that God has called you to do. Does that make sense? Okay, let me pray for us. God, I thank you so much that as we study Scripture, we can find your truth. We can identify that everything you did, you said it was good. And God, when you made us, it was good. God, you don't look at us and you're not disappointed with who we are. You're not disappointed because of things we've gone through. You're not even disappointed because we've made mistakes. Instead, you offer us forgiveness and redemption and restoration. You offer wholeness and healing and completeness. God, I thank you that you still have a destiny. You have a purpose for our life, that you want to lead and guide us into all that you have. And God, you want to use us to be world changers. God, I thank you that in the midst of the storm, that we don't have to go through the storm alone, that God, you are in the boat with us. Jesus, you are with us in our boat. And you're not going to let us drown. You're not going to let us be overwhelmed and overcome by the storm. And God, I ask that you even give us wisdom with the people that we surround ourselves with, that we would have people that would encourage us in the middle of these storms and that would challenge us to be better than we are. And God, I thank you that in this rising generation where so many people are looking at Generation Z and describing them as the hopeless generation, God, that you would look at them and you would encourage them with the destiny and the purpose you have for them. God, that this would be a faith-filled generation and that the people from this room would be so full of faith, they'd be able to walk out and they would be able to speak and breathe life into their friends and their classmates and their teammates, the people they go to church with and in youth group with. God, use them to speak faith and hope to people that are struggling to identify the purpose and identity you have for them. God, use us to make a difference in this world. In Jesus' name, amen. Pastor Holden, back to you.